You're still on to our coverage of Israel-Hamas. Well, we're now beginning our first conversation for the day as Dr. Tony Agbons, a senior lecturer at the Anglia Ruskin University, London, joins us virtually from London. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Agbons.
Good morning, Bukola.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Very, very tempting indeed to begin to look at what we just saw, the evidence, more evidence being presented by the Israeli Defense Forces. But let's start with, a scrutiny of Hamas's ideology. One of the first few stories that we read today was about a car ramming into the Israeli embassy in Tokyo, and a man has been arrested. How dangerous is Hamas's ideology, not just to Israel and the Palestinian people, but also to the rest of the world, in the light of these kinds of circumstances that now seem to be springing up in different parts of the world?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Watching all that, your channel have been showing since I joined the studio, it's really, really heartbreaking to see the level of carnage and destruction of life that has been going on since October 7, when this crisis began. And you just talk of the incident in Japan. There was another incident in another country about a week ago where somebody was killed as well. So, and you know that the Hamas group, resistance force, militia, and countries like Israel, the US, the UK, the EU, and their allies have labeled them a terrorist group. So they believe they are fighting for a cause, the liberation of their people, and the ideology is, the existence of the nation of Israel. Israel cannot exist, and Israel on their part are saying that they deserve, their homeland, they can live in their country. So that has been the story in the last many decades of the crisis between Israel and Palestine, and especially since 2007, when the Hamas group took over the leadership of Gaza, and they began to rule and reign there. So it's very, very sad to see the level of carnage that has been ongoing.
Now, if indeed that you agree that this ideology is different, and this has been supported by a former member of the Israeli Defense Forces who argues that even if you decimate Hamas's military capability, you cannot defeat its ideology. How does Israel and perhaps the entire international community leadership take responsibility for the development of an alternative ideology, perhaps especially in the Arab world?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. The use of military force alone is not going to solve this crisis in the long term. In the short term, perhaps, but in the long term, definitely not. I think both sides needs to come to the table and start to discuss. And like the US President Joe Biden have said, even though that didn't go really well with the Israelis at this point, because they feel that they have been hard done by following the attack that took place on October 7th. So the US, again, have proposed a two-state solution. I think that is going to be the long-term solution to this crisis, because I was, reading some report yesterday, and the Israelis are saying, they are saying that they will take security responsibility for Gaza after this onslaught. So that is not going to solve it. So because an ideology is, like we all know in international relations, an ideology is difficult to destroy, because it's a thing of the mind, it's a belief, and people will not just change their ideology. Generations that have, grown up in both Israel and Palestine, with hatred, you can't just, these things cannot just be wiped away, by military fiat. So some of us still believe, and I know a lot of people believe, and that is the way to go, that both sides needs to come to the table a ceasefire needs to come in place, although the Israelis are very much against that, and they are justifying their, continuous incursion into Gaza, and that is why you see all they are doing in the hospitals, and justifiably so as well, because Intel has it that the Hamas group, they are using hospitals and schools as shield points where they had weapons and from where they carry out attacks. So in the long run, I think it's a table discussion that will sort out all this.
It is indeed the consensus, wherever you turn, that a two-state solution is the way out of this age-long quagmire. So the U.S. President Joe Biden isn't particularly saying anything that is new, but he has said that he told the Israeli Defense Forces, the leadership of the government, that occupying Gaza would be a big mistake. Could the president, the U.S. president, had been more categorical about what he meant to say about his position about Israel's prosecution of this war? Is he in support or against?
Yeah, I think President Joe Biden, he's been in the game, in diplomatic game for a very long time as an elder statesman. What he said to me was in very clear language, very clear communication. A two-state solution is the way to go. But I think why the Israelis are, really up against Joe Biden for that statement is because they feel that the military option they have taken now would definitely, help slow down Hamas' capability to attack them in future. But the way I look at the Israelis defense forces, they are actually thinking of occupying Gaza. They want to occupy it. They want to, stay there for a while and probably stop, future attacks. But I think, like we saw in that United Nations meeting, Israel occupying Hamas is not going to be a solution. It will just be a temporary solution, and then we'll go back again to square one, and other attacks will happen. And the truth of the matter is that when you look at how crises, have taken place in other parts of the world, the fact that there is an occupation force in a locality does not mean that there will not be pockets of attacks. So we've seen that play out in other parts of the world, in Cambodia, in Myanmar, other regions of the world where you have an occupation force in place. So that taking over Gaza and occupying it, like the Israelis are thinking, is not the way to go at all.
I'd like to explore that a bit further. If there's time, I'll do that perhaps before the end of this conversation. But help us understand, if you can, what's happening in the British Parliament. Today, we woke up to the news that Labour leader, had 56 of his lawmakers, including several of his policy team, voting with the opposition party to demand a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict in the Gaza Strip. And, just days before now, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, sacked his Interior Minister, Sule Braverman. I hope I got her name correctly. Yeah. How much of the conflict is dividing the parliament? And does this suggest also that there is no unanimity in the position of the British Parliament on Israel's prosecution of this war?
Yeah, the UK Parliament, the drama that played out yesterday, the Labour leader Keir Starmer was really, kind of thrown under the bus by his MPs. As I speak to you, I think about 9 of his front benchers, have resigned their roles. Some shadow ministers are saying that they are leaving their positions. And again, it goes back to what we've been saying in this conversation this morning: the heated and the kind of puzzle-like nature of this Israel-Palestinian crisis. So a lot of the British MPs, listening to their constituent, believe that it's time for a ceasefire. But, looking at the way the United Kingdom, strong ally of Israel, supports the Israelis, it's been really difficult, for even the British Prime Minister to outrightly condemn the attack of Israel, on Hamas. Although he has, said that Israel should carry out their operations in line with international norms. So that has been the case. So it's a very tight situation. It's a kind of a catch-22 scenario. So what happened yesterday with a lot of the Labour MPs defying their leader, was a surprise to many of us. But the MPs have said they are listening to their constituents. So it's brought a lot of division within the Labour Party as we speak. And even the UK Prime Minister, he did release a statement a few days ago, and he did categorically state that the Israelis should, weigh their options very well and work within the perimeter of international laws in their attack in Hamas, especially with the hospitals. But the Israelis, like we see from visuals, they are saying that the Hamas, they are using hospitals as a point for their military operations. So and they need to take those areas down. So those are the conflicting situations. It's really dire. All what is happening is something that no one can really put a handle on. But we hope that both parties will come to the table and a ceasefire will be called very soon.
If you can answer this in a few words, is this suggestive of a possible fact that the parliament, has MPs with Jewish and Palestinian roots, hence, it's encouraging this kind of division that we're seeing?
Yeah, there are quite a number of MPs from those regions. Yeah, you are very, very correct. Quite a number of them.
And that helps us to have a clearer understanding of what's happening. We want to thank you very much, Dr. Tony Agbons, a senior lecturer at the Anglia Ruskin University in London. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you, Bukola, and have a nice day.
And you too, sir.